Welcome. This is Majesty Sussex Report. I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us. Today, we'll be examining two high profile cases that shed light on the challenges faced by women in the public eye, particularly women in the entertainment industry, as an example, and in royal circles. Our focus will be on Blake Lively's recent allegations against her co star Justin Baldoni and the ongoing media scrutiny of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, since her relationship with Prince Harry began. Blake Lively, known for her roles in popular television series and films, has recently filed a lawsuit against her It Ends With Us co star and director, Justin Baldoni. The actress alleges sexual harassment on set and claims that Baldoni initiated a social media campaign to destroy her reputation after she voiced her concerns. This case has brought attention to the potential misuse of power and the existence of hostile work environments still in Hollywood. Turning to the royal sphere, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, has endured what many describe as a relentless negative media campaign, particularly from UK tabloids, since her relationship with Prince Harry became public in 2016. For nearly 8 years, let that sink in. For nearly 8 years, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, has faced scrutiny that often crossed the line into what can be considered bullying and harassment. I personally would say it always crossed the line, but I'm trying to keep it level-headed here. But not only in regards to bullying and harassment, but also with the very, very, very heavy racial undertones frequently present in the coverage, if not right out racist. These two cases, while distinct, share a common thread of public scrutiny, alleged harassment, and the challenges faced by women in high profile positions. But let's be clear here. What I'm trying to do, or my intention, is not to put these two women against each other. I will be making comparison, but it's not comparison to say one is better than the other. It's comparison within institution and how one is treated over the other. These two women have every single right to voice their concerns, their complaints, every single right to bring it to the public sphere and also to take it to the justice system. So let's be clear on that. Let's also be very clear on I am a very proud feminist. And therefore, that is why what I'm looking at is the feminist movement and how it's treated. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and Blake Lively. The contrasting stories of Meghan Markle and Blake Lively reveal a troubling truth about modern feminism. It often fails the women who need it the most. Both women have faced smear campaigns, but their experiences and the responses they received underscore the feminist movement's persistent blind spots, particularly when it comes to women of color. While Blake Lively's allegations against her co star PR team were taken seriously, Meghan remains the target of a relentless 8-year campaign, met largely with silence from a movement she proudly represents. This disparity is no accident. It reflects a deeper history of selective advocacy within feminism that has left marginalized women to fend for themselves. The feminist movement has always struggled with inclusivity. From its earliest days, it prioritized the struggles of white women at the expense of others. Sojourner Truth, famous 1851 speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" highlighted this divide. As white suffragettes fought for voting rights, Truth asked why her struggles as a black woman, equally rooted in gender, were ignored.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North all talking about rights, the white man gonna be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman?
Her question underscores a painful truth. Feminism has often excluded those who face overlapping oppressions, such as race, class, and gender. The suffrage movement is another stark example. While leaders like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton achieved monumental victories, their focus on white women's rights came at the cost. They actively distanced themselves from abolitionists, sidelining black women in the process. These early divisions set a precedent that would persist through the second wave of feminism in the 1960s and 70s, when the movement priorities were workplace equality, reproductive rights, and sexual liberation. Now, those were centered in the experiences of middle-class white women. Issues like systemic racism and economic disparity, which disproportionately affected women of color, were largely ignored.
While the whole internet turned against Blake Lively, she was apparently pretty surprised at the backlash and drama surrounding the release of her film It Ends With Us last month. A source revealed to People that the actor felt very vulnerable and upset, as there wasn't a single day when she was not in the news in an unfavorable light. The source says that Blake is not used to such situations, and it just felt out of control to her. Lively faced brutal criticism for underplaying the movie's theme of domestic violence and promoting it as a romantic comedy. Another reason for the flack was her feud with the film's director and male lead, Justin Baldoni. The duo also didn't do any press together in the lead-up to the release. As per the source, despite the recent challenges, Lively is ready to move on and start her next project.
This historical exclusion has ripple effects today, shaping the feminist movement's blind spot. Meghan Markle's experience epitomizes how these patterns persist. As a biracial woman married into the British royal family, Meghan became an easy target for both media and institutional bias. Stories labeling her as quote unquote difficult, a bully, and a bad decision maker have dominated headlines, weaponizing the very traits, independence, ambition, and resilience that feminism claims to celebrate. Yet the feminist movement has been largely silent, offering little in the way of public defense. Contrast this with Blake Lively's recent allegations against her co-star, Justin Baldoni's PR team. Lively accused them of planting negative stories about her to deflect attention from his alleged misconduct. The response was swift and empathetic, reflecting the archetype of the wronged white woman, which often elicits public outrage and support. The fragile white woman. Lively's whiteness and perceived fragility afforded her a level of protection Meghan has never received. This disparity isn't about the validity of Lively's claim. They are serious and deserve attention. But the media and public reaction to her situation highlights how privilege influences who receives sympathy and advocacy. Meghan, despite her feminist advocacy, and some may argue her privilege and global platform, has been vilified rather than supported, exposing the feminist movement's ongoing struggle to address intersectional issues. The concept of intersectionality, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, is crucial to understanding this disparity. Meghan's identity as a Black biracial woman subjected her to a unique blend of racism and misogyny that the media has weaponized against her. Tabloids framed her as an outsider disrupting royal tradition, spinning narratives like the infamous Meghan made Kate cry story to undermine her credibility. These tactics echoed historical efforts to discredit assertive Black women, painting them as angry and ungrateful. Blake Lively's story, on the other hand, aligns with a more familiar narrative: a white woman speaking out against injustice. She was met with immediate support. Her allegations fit neatly into societal archetypes of victimhood, allowing her story to gain traction without the added burden of, oh well, racial bias. This isn't to pit Lively against Markle at all, but rather to highlight how systemic bias shape public narratives. The feminist movement, if truly committed to equality, must confront these disparities head on. Meghan Markle's feminist credentials are undeniable. She has championed causes like paid parent leave, girls' education, and breaking down gender stereotypes. Her speech at a UN Women event, where she declared herself proud to be a feminist, exemplifies her dedication to advancing women's rights. Yet, when she became the target of relentless harassment, the feminist movement largely stayed silent. This silence is deafening. It suggests that feminism still prioritizes the struggles of white women while sidelining women of color. Meghan's advocacy should have positioned her as a feminist icon, but instead, she has been left to fight her battles alone. The contrast with Blake Lively's experience makes this failure even more glaring. The stark difference in how Meghan and Blake have been treated highlights the feminist movement's ongoing failure to address race and privilege within its ranks. The attacks on Meghan by white women like Camilla, Tominey, and Rebecca English, and many others, expose a troubling pattern. When white women attack women of color, the feminist movement remains largely silent. This silence is not only harmful, but reveals the movement's historical and systemic blind spot. Camilla Tominey's recent compassionate response to the tragic case of Giselle Pellicot, a white woman drugged and are for years, illustrates the selective empathy often displayed by figures like her. And that is actually the right reaction. In cases involving white women, particularly those cast as fragile victims, the response is immediate, sympathetic, and humane. Yet Tominey has consistently demonstrated a stark lack of compassion for Meghan, a biracial woman who has openly shared her struggles, including ideation of wanting to unalive herself. She's had a miscarriage and relentless public harassment. Now, here are some of the things that Camilla Tominey has said throughout the years. This whole thing about Meghan made Kate cry. It was Tominey was the journalist who first published the false story that Meghan made Kate Middleton cry before Meghan and Harry's wedding. This narrative was later debunked by Meghan herself in the Oprah interview, where she revealed that it was Kate who made her cry. Despite this revelation, Tominey never retracted or apologized, allowing the harmful narrative to persist. And to be frank, she is part of the smear campaign against Meghan.
Over the weekend, Camilla Tominey published not one, but two commentary pieces about Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, and Catherine, Princess of Wales. Notice that just from the titles in both instances, it is framed as Kate the victim, Meghan the perpetrator. It's not why have the two never really gotten along? Why hasn't Kate really taken to Meghan? It's why Meghan has never really taken to Kate. Before we dive into it, I think it is best that we hear from a Black British author. This is from Afua Hirsch's book, British. In her book, she writes that we are in an era of racism without racists. I think that really helps encapsulate this period we are in and why it is even more difficult to talk about these subjects. Most of us now realize that racism isn't just the stereotypical way you imagine it. It is subtle at times, it is insidious, it can be 1,000 little cuts. In many instances in this commentary in particular, Camilla Tominey says a lot of the quiet parts out loud. She wouldn't consider it a problem because really, this is a continuation of what she's been writing for quite some time. This is a March 2020 commentary. Sorry, Hilary Mantel, but it's not abominably racist to question Meghan Markle's behavior. In this piece, she writes, quote, "Has anti-Americanism and even misogyny been at play here? Certainly." She's so close to misogynoir. Then she goes on to say, "But I am yet to witness any hostility towards the couple because of the color of Meghan Markle's skin." Now, I'm just spitballing here, but could it be you don't see it because you simply haven't experienced it as a white woman raised in a society that values whiteness? And that perhaps one of the bigger issues with the press in general is the fact that it's mainly white people in newsrooms making decisions about what is racist coverage and what isn't. It is wild that calling out racism is enough to label you a Meghan Markle fan when you are just pointing out the obvious. And my problem with Meghan Markle coverage is I have yet to be given a clear reason why she deserved the kind of treatment she received from the press. Because having a different style of working and wanting to dive right in and having a different personality that maybe doesn't mesh with your sister-in-law is not a reason. And now back to this piece from December 2nd, 2023, in which Meghan Markle is inadvertently called a brash blabbermouth. Quote, "She's very English, which perhaps goes a long way to explaining why she didn't get on with an uninhibited, overconfident American," end quote. And it's funny because all the talk of misogyny and being pro-women that Camilla tends to expound upon, this is setting up that stereotypical narrative of women be fighting. We have to pit women against each other. It's so tired. Stop doing it. Not everyone is BFFs with their sister-in-law. Afua Hirsch refers to this as a polite prejudice. Quote, "It was classic British racism, only half said and half implied, a kind of polite prejudice that is only more pernicious for its subtlety," end quote. And that's what this entire commentary is. It's polite prejudice. This is not surprising from a journalist who has gotten things wrong in the past to favor the English-born princess, or seemingly relied on shoddy research from a right-wing think tank that she did not cite to write this article. This is the polite prejudice. And of course, it's so much bigger than just one journalist. As we are seeing from the conversations around Endgame and this particular conversation, we have a long way to go. For more.
In 2018, Tominey wrote an article linking Meghan's work with the Hub Community Kitchen, which supported survivors of the Grenfell Tower fire, to terrorism. This baseless and offensive association undermined Meghan's charitable efforts and perpetuated harmful stereotypes, not to even address the kind of harassment that the women at the Grenfell Tower from the Grenfell Tower fire who were already victims becoming again re-victimized because of her rather stereotypical racist article. Her criticism when Meghan courageously shared her experience of a miscarriage in the New York Times, Tominey criticized her for oversharing and questioning her motives. This lack of empathy starkly contrasts with Tominey's compassionate reporting on white women's tragedies. Her defense of Kate Middleton, where Tominey has consistently defended Kate Middleton, portraying her as the epitome of grace and composure. When Meghan revealed in her Oprah interview that she felt like unalive herself, being in the royal family and the things that were happening to her, Tominey and others dismissed her, basically calling her a liar, denying her the same empathy extended to Kate and other white women. It's not just Camilla Tominey. Other white women in British media and politics, such as Rebecca English, Angela Lavin, and even, if you recall, Jo Marnie, the ex-girlfriend now of UKIP leader Henry Bolton at the time, have contributed to the relentless campaign against Meghan. Marnie's openly racist remarks about Meghan's quote-unquote seed tainting the royal family and her stated refusal that she would never have intimacy with a person of color, even though she used another word, reveals the deep seated racism driving much of this hostility. The feminist movement's silence in the face of these attacks is deafening. When white women perpetuate harm against women of color, feminism as a collective force often fails to intervene, leaving women like Meghan to face these assaults alone. This pattern can be traced back to the movement's historical exclusion of Black women and other minorities. The treatment of Blake Lively further underscores these dynamics. Lively's accusations are directed at a man, Justin Baldoni, and have been met with widespread support, as they should. This reflects the traditional feminist narrative of women versus men, a framework that often elicits solidarity and action. In contrast, Meghan's primary aggressors have been white women, which complicates the narrative and exposes the feminist movement's discomfort with addressing intergender violence, particularly when race is involved. Blake's whiteness and alignment with traditional narratives of victimhood, fragility, innocence, and relatability ensures her accusations are taken seriously, which again they should. Period. Meghan, on the other hand, is often cast as difficult, calculating, and ungrateful. Her race and independence disrupt the archetype of the fragile woman deserving of protection, making her an easier target for attacks and less likely to receive feminist solidarity. White women like Kate Middleton are often placed on a pedestal of fragility, where their perceived innocence and vulnerability demand protection. Meghan, who has spoken openly about her struggles with mental health, is denied the same empathy. Instead, her strength and independence are weaponized against her, painting her as a liar or attention seeker. This dichotomy reflects broader societal biases that dehumanize Black women, denying them the right to vulnerability. The feminist movement has perpetuated this dynamic by failing to challenge these stereotypes. When white women like Blake Lively speak out, they're seen as brave and deserving of support. When Meghan does, it's 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 just dismissed and it's vilified. The feminist movement's silence in Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex case speaks volumes about its priorities. Historically, the movement has focused on issues affecting white women while sidelining the concerns of women of color. This selective advocacy continues today, as evidenced by the lack of feminist outcry against the relentless attacks on Meghan by white women in the British media. Feminism and the feminist should be the first to call out figures like Camilla Tominey, Rebecca English, Angela Levin, and all the others for their harmful narratives. Yet the movement has largely ignored the role of race in Meghan's treatment, failing to recognize how deeply intertwined racism and misogyny are in this case. The contrasting experiences of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and Blake Lively serve as a stark reminder of the feminist movement's shortcomings. When it comes to addressing the intersection of race and gender, while Blake's case has highlighted the collusion of media and PR companies in shaping narratives of harm and victimhood, Meghan's treatment reflects the broader issue of media complicity in perpetuating systemic racism and misogyny. These patterns are not isolated. They reveal a deeply ingrained hierarchy of empathy where whiteness and fragility are prioritized over resilience and independence. If feminism is to remain relevant and effective, it must confront the ways in which the media, and by extension, PR campaigns, collude to amplify harm against marginalized women while shielding others. The movement must evolve to challenge these dynamics, holding media institutions and their allies accountable while standing firmly for all women, regardless of race or of background. Only then can it dismantle the structures that allow such inequalities to persist.